Hello, my name is Emmy Bauer. I am this year's District 3 Club Extension Chair, Vice President Education at Maverick Toastmasters Club, and President of Fearless Speakers Toastmasters Club. Since I joined Toastmasters in 1999, I've seen the organization go through a lot of changes. But in the last 23 years, nothing has caused such dramatic change as COVID. The majority of the clubs, not just here in District 3, but worldwide, were affected negatively by this pandemic. Most clubs did okay meeting on Zoom or other platforms when that was the only option, but most clubs experienced a lot of attrition. Members who had to spend their entire workday on Zoom didn't also want to add Zoom Toastmasters meetings on top of that. Zoom fatigue became a real thing. The struggle for clubs then turned to the issue of meeting in person versus continuing only on Zoom. Officer teams grappled with balancing the concerns of their more cautious members with those members who were just craving that in-person contact. And when many of the club officer teams began looking for an in-person venue, their efforts were often rewarded with limited and very pricey options. Additionally, if you began meeting in person, what about those gems of members who during COVID days had joined from out of state or even out of the country? You just simply shrug and say goodbye to those members? Some clubs did, while other clubs opted to stay online only, while others still chose a third option of hybrid meetings. And regardless of which of these three categories your club falls into, every club needs to publicize and be in that mindset of constant recruitment. One great tool for that purpose is the open house. Today, I will go over some basics of planning and hosting an open house event, some basics of holding hybrid meetings, and then I'll combine those two topics to get you thinking about how best to hold open house hybrid meetings. First, let's talk about open house events in general. Starting with the basics. Make sure you and the rest of your officer team select a date well in advance, and everyone on the officer team knows what that date is. Make announcements at your club meeting as soon as you have that date, and with that very first announcement, invite a member of the club who is working on a path that has leadership projects to step up and serve as the chairperson for this special event. And don't forget that this willing soul doesn't even need to be on level 3 or higher to do this now and complete a leadership project. If they're newer members, they may need some extra coaching and guidance, but they can do it. Whatever you do, don't let this opportunity to complete a leadership project go by without someone in your club receiving leadership credit for it. It's in that mindset of constant recruitment that all clubs should maintain. Just go ahead and plan to hold open house events regularly. Every other month seems like a frequency that yields positive results for many clubs and doesn't overwork your team or members. So you can schedule out for the next 6 or 12 months. Then decide on your program for the open house. Will you have simply a standard club meeting with an emphasis on PR and label it as an open house? Or is there something special you're doing with this as a club? Hey, themes are great to have for open house, right? An example of this is building interview skills, where table topics questions are all common interview questions, and schedule speakers with some know-how or authority talk about what employers are looking for. Also, seasonal themes are great. For example, many clubs hold Halloween events in October or winter events in December. Here are a few other program questions for your officer team to consider. Will you handpick your speakers for this event or schedule as you would normally? If you have 3 speakers, perhaps you might want to schedule only 2 for that night and spend some extra time elaborating on the Toastmasters program, more so than usual, or having members give brief testimonials. Discuss all of these options as an officer team and with your event chair, and make sure everyone gets on the same page. Now let's dig a little deeper into the open house program. You'll definitely want to put your more experienced members in the 3 big positions of Toastmaster, general evaluator, and topic master. So they put on a well-run professional show for your guests. But hey, a few snafus in functionary roles might actually be useful for showing guests that we are all works in progress and that Toastmasters is a safe place for a less than perfect performance. So the newer members may be good for those functionary roles. As for speakers, if you plan to have two, consider having one newer member followed by one moderately experienced member. Or if you plan to have three speakers, schedule in a beginning speaker, an intermediate speaker, and an advanced speaker in that order. This will show your guests how, over time, membership in the club can help them improve as speakers. And of course, you'll want solid speech evaluators on the open house program. Make sure all those early details are settled sooner rather than later. In addition to whether or not there will be a change in the program or a theme for the event, consider other options. Will it take place at an alternate location? Will there be food? Hey, free food is a great draw if your club funds can handle that. If not, a potluck or simple bring your own dessert to share could also work well. Around the holidays, a cookie, gift, or recipe exchange can be simple but fun. Once those details are all worked out, again, sooner rather than later, have a member of the committee create a flyer. And don't forget to include location information and/or whom to contact for a Zoom link or to whom to RSVP. Separate times for food service and start a meeting as applicable. Bullet points of what you want them to know about your club meeting and anything else you want your prospective guests to know. Make your flyer graphic and fun while meeting Toastmasters International's brand requirements. Once you have that open house flyer, publicize, and then publicize. Turn your entire club membership into one single PR committee. To do that, start by converting that open house flyer into an image. Write up some text you want to accompany that flyer image, and then repeatedly send that out to your members with encouragement for them to help advertise by inviting their friends, family, and coworkers, and post to their social media accounts using the provided text and image. Especially for special events, but even for regular club meetings, PR should be every club member's responsibility, not just the vice president, public relations, or the event chair. And of course, remind everyone in the club about the event at every single meeting leading up to the open house, and then go into greater detail the closer you get to the event. Also, don't forget to post your open house event to the District 3 events calendar and include your flyer image with that posting. Just a little tip. Don't get discouraged if your first open house event does not attract many guests, although it just might. Go ahead and get started planning the next one. Depending on which marketing theorist you follow, or if you follow any marketing theorist at all, it could take 5 or more exposures to a flyer or ad for someone to even stop to read what that flyer or ad has to say, much less to act on it. So if someone sees the 6th publication of your flyer for your first open house and has even the slightest interest in attending, they might not show up to visit until your 3rd open house. Just keep on keeping on. The more you get your club's name out there, the more easily it will be recognized in subsequent announcements, and the more likely your target audience will be to respond. Just as you turned your club members into one collective PR committee earlier in the process, for the day of the event, emphasize to your membership that on the day of your open house event, they are all a part of the membership committee. Encourage each of them to arrive early, greet all guests that arrive, give them a guest packet with membership application included. Introduce them to 1 or 2 officers, then invite them to sit down next to you. Engage them in conversation, introduce them to others who take seats nearby, and then hang around after the meeting to continue the conversation, offering to answer any questions they might have and pointing out the membership application in their guest packet. You can even let the guests know that you can help them fill out the application as needed. After the event, have your club's vice president membership follow up immediately with a "thank you for visiting" note and offer to answer any questions and an invitation to return to the next meeting. Whether your club is virtual, in person, or hybrid, taking these general steps will help you get set up for an open house ready for prospective members. Now that we've covered preparing for an open house in general, what about hybrid meetings? The decision to convert to hybrid meetings from purely online meetings is a challenging one. There are many different things to consider, not the least of which is an affordable venue with available Wi-Fi. But if you have such a venue, there are a few things to consider. That frantic, necessary conversion from in-person to online meetings probably came as a shock to most clubs in 2020. I can't imagine I was the only one who had never heard the name Zoom before then, not to mention felt well-versed enough in online meeting technology to be able to set anything up and begin running it. But since most clubs are now making the opposite conversion these days, there's probably no need to research the different platforms to select one to use for the club. Now, as a disclaimer to all you Microsoft Teams members out there, because most of my personal experience is with Zoom, that is a platform I've heard most other clubs are using as well, and the platform that District 3 uses to conduct business and contests. Moving forward in this presentation, I will speak in the context of Zoom and the tools and features this platform offers. Whatever platform your club has been using, if everyone is comfortable with it, stick with that. If your club funds can afford a subscription upgrade to take advantage of advanced features, that will likely be a good investment for you as you convert to hybrid meetings, particularly if your meetings run more than an hour. There are some unique challenges to hybrid meetings, in addition to finding that venue with Wi-Fi, engagement between the two groups, virtual and in-person being the most daunting. How do you get online participants to feel like they're part of the family? And likewise, how do you get the in-person participants to recognize that the virtual members are part of the family? It is a challenge to engage both virtual attendees and in-person attendees equally, so special effort must be made and constantly reinforced. A great small step you can take is to add virtual members to your standard traditional salutations. So we're all accustomed to that standard greeting of Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. So how about this? Starting with the club officers, try to encourage everyone to add Zoomers or virtual Toastmasters to that greeting. For example, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, Zoomers, and guests. And when you address the Zoomers, be sure to look directly into the camera. These are simple, small things everyone can do, but doing these things regularly reminds both the in-person members that there are others joining in, and the virtual members that they are an integral part of the family. Once you are established on the right virtual platform for your club, probably the most important elements of an effective hybrid meeting are equipment. So let's dive into the essential equipment. Another disclaimer, this recommendation list is based purely on my experience, the experience of others I've spoken with, and what has worked for other clubs. None of this is right or wrong or the only way to do this. The equipment for hybrid meetings can all be brought in by members, loaned or donated to, or purchased by your club as funds allow. Here's my suggested equipment list, and I'll go into more depth on each one after I list them all. In addition to the fast, reliable Wi-Fi service, your club would benefit from 2 or 3 laptop computers, at least one larger monitor or TV screen that can be connected to one of the computers, at least 2 fixed cameras on either tripods or mounts, 1 conference-style speaker or microphone, power strips and/or extension cords as needed. So, okay, let's go through each one of those items one at a time and why I am suggesting them. At least 2 laptop computers. Now, don't worry, your club doesn't need to purchase any. Just have 2 or 3 of the members bring their own in on a regular basis and get them connected to the available Wi-Fi. You don't want to have so many laptops or other devices connected that the Wi-Fi bandwidth gets strained. So it is not necessarily true that more is better. 2 or 3 is good. Provide extension cords or power strips as needed, or make sure those who are designated to bring their laptops also bring cords for themselves. So the first laptop would run the club's primary Zoom host account. This account should log in well in advance of the start of the meeting. About half an hour is a good amount of time to get everything connected and tested and ready for members and guests to start logging on. Whoever runs that laptop will serve as the Zoom host. Connect this first laptop to the larger TV screen and monitor and face that screen toward the audience. If you're one of those more technologically savvy people than I am, and you're able to get your hands on a second larger monitor and have the know-how to connect and use both screens, which I don't, and face them both toward the audience. Keep one of those screens in gallery mode for the whole meeting so everyone in the in-person audience can see everyone who is online. And then the second screen, spotlight the speaker, whether that speaker is virtual or online. If you have only one larger screen, use that for spotlighting the speakers. And I'll expound on spotlighting and pinning on Zoom in just a little bit. That larger screen facing the audience is the perfect place to mount that first fixed camera. You can use member cell phones for this or dedicated webcams that can be purchased for approximately $60 each. The laptops are great for interacting with them because they're able to see your facial expressions and gestures, and you will be able to see if any hands are raised. The chat feature is great for keeping online members engaged. You can use the chat feature for some light banter, casting votes for awards, submitting speech evaluations for in-person speakers, and then the host can copy and paste those into an email for the speaker. You can post the word of the day and answer any questions. Also, empower your virtual members to let the host or co-host know of any technical issues, such as the volume being too low or the microphone malfunctioning. It is also helpful to provide an emergency cell phone number of someone who is in person. If a major functionary is online and suddenly drops off before they're supposed to perform their role, they should have a way to text someone and say, "Hey, I'm having technical issues here." For cases where the speaker is virtual, let them know that someone will collect their speech evaluation forms from those in person and scan it and email it to them later. Spotlighting is important for hybrid meetings, particularly if your club likes to record the speeches on Zoom so speakers can watch their videos at a later time. And by the way, offering these recordings of their speeches and evaluations is a great service to your club members if someone is willing and able to take this task on. There are actually some decent free or inexpensive video editing software out there, such as Wondershare, that can cut and edit videos to help your members further their learning experience by being able to see themselves from the audience's perspective. But this can get tricky with so many Zoom accounts, cameras, and speakers running at one time, so spotlighting becomes important. If the meeting host is using multiple screens and the speaking area camera and microphone are not connected to a single Zoom account, virtual attendees and the Zoom recording might feature the in-person speaker's voice, but not the video. You may end up with a video of the speaker, but with no accompanying sound. Selecting that account to spotlight for everyone will ensure that both the Zoomers and the Zoom recording see and hear the speaker. You can spotlight for everyone for the speaking area camera or an online participant who is speaking using the ellipses in the corner of that particular person's Zoom account screen. That will cause the screen to appear as the featured speaker view on each Zoom participant screen, and that guarantees that that is the video that will be featured in the recording. Additionally, spotlighting prevents the speaker view from being stolen by other unmuted accounts when an extraneous noise is made. That is also helpful if the speaker is virtual, so they will show up in full screen on the large monitor in person and will prevent sounds picked up by the in-person microphone from, again, stealing that view from the speaker. Yes, I am speaking from experience here. At the start of our hybrid experience, we had so many recordings that were unusable due to there being no sound in the video, or vice versa, or someone coughs and the video switches to the audience view instead of the speaker. Yeah. Anyway, it might be helpful for your Zoomers to know, though, that if they are the speaker, evaluator, or table topics participant and want to pin whichever account is serving as timer, their pin will override the spotlight, so they don't have to watch themselves speak, and they will be able to see the timing signals. At times, changing the spotlights can feel like a juggling act. This is where a tech-savvy designated co-host without a role is helpful to have if your club membership can accommodate that, but a host and co-host together can generally manage. One tip for virtual and hybrid meetings: the host or co-host should have pre-typed scripts ready to copy and paste into chat. Some scripts you can prepare in advance and save include the following: a generic greeting if only members are online. Hey, everybody, good to see you, that kind of a deal. A special greeting, including links to an electronic guest packet and or guest book if guests are online. Instructions on awards voting procedures. Instructions on submitting speech evaluations. Reminders about scheduled events. Reminders about pinning the timer while they're speaking. And anything else the co-host or host may need to say weekly or regularly at meetings. Just have everything typed out and saved and copy and paste into the chat as needed. Don't forget that anyone who logs on after you post your chat messages will not have seen those chat messages. And also, don't forget to have the host or co-host post the word of the day and its meeting in the chat. It is always helpful to have the presiding officer greet by name any of the virtual attendees to give all the in-person attendees a heads up of who all is online, and to post in the chat the in-person attendance so those online will know everyone who is there. Now, this becomes more than just helpful, but essential when the scheduled topic master is attending virtually, so that they know who is there to be called upon for table topics. Now let's talk about those two topics, open house events and hybrid meetings, to talk about the hybrid open house. The basic rules are all the same. Plan and publicize, publicize, publicize. Have both hard copies and electronic copies of everything available, including agendas and guest packets, and have a virtual guest book set up or an alternate method to collect guest contact information. Now, you likely already have their email address since you would have needed to send them the Zoom link, so you may possibly have all the information you'll need to follow up with them. But the benefit of a virtual guest book is that you get to ask additional questions like, what goals do you have for yourself? How did we do? How did you hear about our club? Have scripts specific to virtual guests ready to copy and paste into direct messages to your guests. Open the virtual meeting early and have at least one person available and designated to greet and chat with the virtual members and especially guests. Have a corresponding designated member for the in-person part of the meeting as well. Invite virtual guests to ask you any questions they might have during the meeting through direct message chat. Now, Zoom actually makes that easier and more discreet than would having a guest whisper any questions into your ear during a meeting. So in-person questions will have to wait until after the meeting concludes. You might also designate a member who attends regularly online to be the primary chatterer with online guests in case you as the host or co-host get busy or distracted before, during, or after the meeting. Put on a good show that is both professional and fun, and make it clear that virtual participants are just as valued and important as in-person participants. Hey, if the online attendees are being neglected, the host or co-host can issue gentle reminders in the form of pointing to the camera, turning the laptop around as needed, slipping a note to someone, or otherwise doing whatever needs to be done to remind everyone to address those on Zoom. Sometimes just speaking up with a reminder like, hey, Sylvia's available online to answer a table topics question will work as well. And that might feel unorthodox in a Toastmasters meeting, but it would be better for you to butt in like that than to let a virtual attendee, especially guest, feel ignored. Interact with Zoomers on chat throughout the meeting to keep them engaged. And as with any guest, in personal or virtual, invite them to return and, even better, to complete the membership application and become a member. So today we've discussed some general ideas on how to have a great open house event, what elements and practices help establish an effective hybrid meeting, and how to put those two topics together for a solid open house event. I hope I've given you some ideas that will help your club recruit new members moving forward, whether that is in person, online, or hybrid. I wish you all the best in growing your club